The way Tay cries her eyes out after Travis's engagement decision says a lot. It was a cold December evening when the headlines broke. Travis Kelce is engaged, but not to Taylor Swift. The news hit like a freight train, sending shockwaves through Taylor's inner circle. For months, the world had been captivated by their whirlwind romance, two stars shining bright in their respective galaxies, brought together by fate. Or so it seemed. Taylor was in her Nashville penthouse when the news came through. She had just finished recording a new song, ironically titled Forever Was Ours, when her best friend and publicist, Andrea, barged in, phone in hand and a look of disbelief on her face. "Have you seen this?" Andrea whispered, hesitating. Taylor, still glowing from the emotional high of creating music, took the phone and froze. There it was. Travis Kelce, down on one knee, proposing to someone else, a woman she'd never seen before, with chestnut brown hair and a smile that seemed too perfect to be real. For a moment, the world stood still. Taylor felt her heart drop into the pit of her stomach. She blinked rapidly, trying to process the image. The caption didn't help. Travis Kelce and childhood sweetheart announce their engagement. A love story years in the making. Childhood sweetheart? Taylor murmured, her voice trembling. Andrea sat down beside her. Apparently, they reconnected a few weeks ago. He didn't tell you? Taylor shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. No, he told me I was it. That we were building something special. He never mentioned her, not once. The tears came fast and heavy, staining her cheeks. Taylor wasn't just heartbroken, she was humiliated. The world had been watching their every move, dissecting their romance like it was a reality show. Now, she was the one left standing alone, a footnote in Travis's love story. Over the next few days, Taylor's sadness turned into anger, then resolve. She buried herself in her work, pouring every ounce of pain into her music. The result was a haunting ballad titled The Ring That Wasn't Mine. The lyrics were raw and cutting. You knelt, but not for me, a vow whispered secretly, I was your stage, your show. But the spotlight was meant for her glow. The song became an instant hit, resonating with fans who had experienced betrayal in their own lives. But for Taylor, it was more than a hit, it was closure. When asked about the situation in an interview months later, Taylor smiled softly. Sometimes, life writes the songs for you. Travis made his choice, and I made mine. I chose to keep singing. The interviewer pressed, do you still have feelings for him? Taylor's response was simple but powerful, no. He was just another chapter, not the ending. As for Travis, rumors swirled that he reached out after hearing the song, offering an apology. Taylor never responded. She had already moved on, leaving him in the rearview mirror as she sped toward her next great adventure. The way Taylor cried her eyes out after Travis's engagement decision said a lot, but the way she rose from it said even more. Title: The way Tay cries her eyes out after Travis's engagement decision says a lot. It had been a whirlwind year for Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. From the moment they were spotted together at a game, the world watched with eager eyes as their love story unfolded in public. Fans speculated, gossiped, and dreamt of a fairy tale ending. But no one could have predicted the twist that came when Travis finally dropped a bombshell. He had made a decision, one that shook the very foundation of their relationship. It all started on a chilly November evening. The couple had spent the day together in Kansas City, away from the prying eyes of the paparazzi, enjoying the simple pleasures of home. Taylor had just wrapped up another show in the city, and they were both looking forward to a quiet dinner. But as they sat across from each other, there was a palpable tension in the air. Travis had been quieter than usual, his eyes distant as he picked at his food. Travis, what's going on? Taylor asked softly, her voice filled with concern. She could tell something was weighing on him. He paused for a moment, staring at his plate. Tay, he began, his voice tight, I've been thinking a lot about where we're going. About us, and I think I need to make a decision. Taylor's heart skipped a beat. They had talked about the future before, dreamed about it even, but this felt different. She could see the strain in his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly as they clasped together. Decision? She asked, trying to mask the anxiety creeping up her spine. He took a deep breath. I love you, Tay, but I don't know if I'm ready for the kind of commitment you need. Not right now. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Her mind raced, but for a moment, she couldn't find her voice. The dreams, the hopes of walking down the aisle together, had been shattered in an instant. Travis had made his decision, and it wasn't the one she'd been praying for. Taylor stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "What are you saying, Travis?" Her voice trembled, the tears welling up in her eyes despite her best efforts to keep them at bay. He stood up too, his expression pained. "I don't want to hurt you, but I can't give you what you deserve." "Not yet, maybe not ever." A silence fell between them, heavy and suffocating. Taylor looked at him, trying to process what had just happened, but her heart was breaking too fast for her to keep up. The woman who had been known for writing songs about heartbreak, love, and loss now found herself in the most painful chapter of her own story. As the first tear slid down her cheek, she quickly wiped it away, but more followed, faster than she could control. She collapsed onto the couch, unable to stop the flood of emotion. This wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined with Travis. This wasn't the love story that would have ended with an engagement, a family, and a life of shared dreams. Travis sat beside her, but there was nothing he could say to fix the damage. He wanted to hold her, to comfort her, but he knew that nothing he could do would take away the pain of his decision. "I'm sorry, Tay," he whispered, his voice raw with regret. Taylor sniffled, her face buried in her hands. "I gave you everything. I trusted you with my heart. And now you're telling me it's not enough?" Her words cut through him like a knife, but he knew deep down that this was the right thing, even if it felt cruel. He wasn't ready for the kind of love Taylor needed, the kind of commitment that she so deserved. And as much as it hurt him to see her cry, he knew he had to let her go. "You are enough, Taylor," he said softly, his voice cracking. "You'll always be enough, but not for me, not right now." The tears flowed freely now, unstoppable. Taylor cried for the love that had slipped through her fingers, for the future she had envisioned that was now nothing more than a distant dream. She cried for herself, for Travis, and for the unspoken pain of knowing that sometimes, love just isn't enough. And as she cried, one thing became abundantly clear. The way Taylor Swift cried her eyes out after Travis's engagement decision said a lot. It said that no matter how strong she seemed, no matter how many people adored her, she was still a woman with a heart capable of being broken. It said that sometimes, even the most beautiful stories don't have a perfect ending. It said that love, no matter how deep, can still be lost when the timing isn't right. And as the night wore on, Taylor knew that she would eventually heal. But for now, she allowed herself to grieve, to feel the weight of the loss, and to understand that some chapters of our lives are never written the way we hope. Title: The way Tay cries her eyes out after Travis's engagement decision says a lot. The night was cool and quiet, the kind of night when secrets seem to slip between the cracks of silence. Taylor Swift sat at her piano in the dimly lit room of her luxurious New York apartment. Her fingers brushed the keys softly, but her mind was 1,000 miles away. She had always known the value of keeping her emotions close, of wearing that polished public persona that seemed to glow effortlessly under the spotlight. But tonight, nothing seemed to matter. Across town, Travis Kelce was having a conversation with his closest friends at a private dinner. He had been planning this moment for weeks, debating, pondering, and finally deciding that now was the time. He was ready for a commitment that would change his life forever. He was ready to propose to Taylor. But what Travis didn't know was that Taylor had already sensed it. She had known something was coming. She had seen the way he looked at her recently, the way he seemed to be contemplating their future with an intensity that made her heart race. And while she had dreamed of this moment in the back of her mind, she had never truly allowed herself to believe it might come to pass. As the evening drew on, Taylor's phone buzzed on the coffee table in front of her. A text from her best friend, Selena, flashed on the screen. Asterisk, "Did you hear? Travis is planning to propose soon. I think he's ready." Taylor's hand trembled as she picked it up, her heart pounding in her chest. The weight of the words hung in the air. A proposal. The thought was overwhelming, even though part of her had known deep down it was inevitable. She wasn't sure when it had happened, when Travis had gone from being a fun fling to someone who had become integral to her life. But now, facing the reality of it, it felt like the ground beneath her had shifted. In a daze, Taylor stood and walked over to the window, gazing out at the New York skyline. The city lights twinkled, reflecting the stars in the night sky. She felt the tears start to well up in her eyes. It wasn't the idea of the engagement that overwhelmed her. It was the realization of how deeply she had fallen for him. How deeply she had allowed herself to fall, despite the fear that had kept her guarded for so long. Travis was the man who had walked into her life and turned everything upside down. And now, the possibility of losing control, of making a decision that would bind her heart and soul to another forever, was almost too much to bear. She collapsed onto the couch, her face buried in her hands as the tears started to flow. She had been strong for so long, always in control, always the one with the answers. But now, she couldn't hold it together. Not when the weight of love, vulnerability, and the future all crashed down on her in an instant. As the tears streamed down her face, she realized something. The way she cried, the rawness of it, said a lot. It wasn't just about Travis's proposal. It was about the life she had built, the sacrifices she had made, and the emotional walls she had carefully constructed to protect herself. But in that moment, as she wept quietly, she knew she was ready to break down those walls. Ready to take the leap into the unknown, with all the messy, beautiful uncertainty that came with it. And so, Taylor cried, not just for the man she loved, but for the future they might build together. For the life she had been so afraid of fully embracing. And for the woman she was becoming, someone who could finally allow herself to be vulnerable, to love without reservation. Some decisions, she realized, were bigger than any stage, any album, or any headline. They were about the heart, and hers, in that moment, was fully open.